Hi everyone, this is Karen from the Historical Society of Montgomery County. As you may notice, I am working from home today in my office, aka the dining room table. It is getting close to mid-December in the year 2020, and I started getting my shopping done for things I was going to make for Christmas and Hanukkah. We celebrate both in my household. And I started wondering, why do we make the foods we make for the holidays we celebrate this time of year? So I figured now would be a good time to look at some of the history behind some of the more popular dishes during our December holidays. So in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, the three main holidays that are celebrated here are Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa. I'm sure there are many other households that celebrate other holidays as well, but those three are the more prominent ones in our county. So let's start with Kwanzaa. People who celebrate Kwanzaa, they will often have various dishes that they will make to celebrate Kwanzaa, which is from December 26th to January 1st each year. It's to celebrate the first harvest and also to celebrate you and your family's culture. So there's no specific, as far as I know, there's no specific list of things you need to have for a Kwanzaa celebration food-wise. It really depends on the family's heritage. So for example, if your father's side of the family came from Nigeria and your mother's side of the family came from Ghana, your family's meal would probably have a combination of Nigerian and Ghana traditional dishes. And one recipe that you will often find, but again, it's not set in stone, in Kwanzaa celebration is cornbread. So I actually attempted to make cornbread, and here you've got a couple of different kinds. I learned there's many different ways to make cornbread. So originally when cornbread was first made, it was made from white ground up corn or cornmeal, and it was originally made in the British colonies in the United States. Now, back during that time, talking 1700s and 1600s as well, the cornmeal was not too sweet, and a lot of people were unable to purchase sugar because it was really expensive at that time. So for people who wanted to sweeten their cornbread, they usually substituted syrup or some type of molasses, because at that time it was pretty easy to come by that. Most cornbreads today, you can still get a white cornmeal, but it's more common to see yellow cornmeal. That change happened kind of around the 19th century, give or take, because the factories figured out how to mass produce yellow cornmeal, and it was generally cheaper to produce that yellow cornmeal. And now you see brands like Jiffy is a very popular store-bought brand that you can get for a quick cornmeal recipe. So now we're going to move on to Hanukkah, another one of the big celebrations that happen in Montgomery County in December of each year. Hanukkah differs in terms of what days that's celebrated. It's based on the lunar calendar. And one of the most common dishes you'll see for Hanukkah is latkes. Now, there's actually two different forms of latkes, at least that I'm aware of. The more common version is the potato latkes, which you see here, and the other latkes is made from ricotta cheese, which is here. Now, latkes allegedly is made because of the Jewish book of Judith, or I guess it's the story of Judith, where she actually was a young widow who saved her village from an invading Assyrian army. And the story goes that Judith gave the Assyrian army's general some wine and cheese. And once he got drunk and passed out, she actually took his own sword and decapitated him. So without having a leader of that particular army, she then saved her village by doing that. So that is allegedly why you have all of these dairy dishes, including the ricotta latkes, during celebrations of Hanukkah. Now, as for the more common potato latkes, that comes from the Ashkenazi European Jewish population. Looking around the 1800s is when you start seeing the potato latkes. And they switched to potatoes instead of ricotta because that population was primarily farmers at that time, and they were experiencing a lot of crop failures. And they found out that it's really easy to mass produce potatoes when nothing else will grow. So potatoes were plentiful, so they just fried them up in the oil, which connects to the story of Hanukkah, with the oil lasting 8 days instead of the expected one. And that's how you get the potato latkes, which has been very popular ever since the 1800s. So the last holiday we're going to talk about is Christmas. And in Montgomery County, there are a lot of ties to Germany, where allegedly Dresden, Germany, was where stollen, or stollen bread, was invented. And here I have a slice of stollen bread. It's a candied bread with some powdered sugar on top, so you get things like raisins and dried citrus peels or candied citrus peels in the bread. Now, the earliest known documentation of this bread, it looked very different at the time, but it was documented in 1474, so that's a very long time ago. The original stollens included things like flour, oats, and water, and they really weren't that sweet. But for Advent season, bakers would throw in fruits and other things to make it a little more special for the holiday season. And apparently, since Germany was Catholic at that time, during Advent, you were not allowed to use things like butter and milk. So bakers really would struggle to make something sweet and flavorful for the Christmas holiday. And it looks like there were quite a few petitions, one most notably from Prince Ernest, advocating to the Pope that, you know, we really want to allow our bakers to be able to use butter and milk and all these sweet things to celebrate the holiday. Please lift those restrictions. And it seems like there was a lot of back and forth, and the Pope just didn't want to let that happen. But eventually, looking at 1490, the Pope lifted the ban for certain higher-ups, so princes, and whatnot, they were allowed to use butter and milk for the Advent season. And if other people wanted to use it as well, they would have to pay a fine to the church because you're not supposed to use that during the Advent season. And the ban for butter the ban of using butter during the Advent season was completely lifted. You wouldn't have to pay a fine when Germany finally became Protestant instead of Catholic. So one of my favorite stories revolving around Stollen is connected to the Dresden Stollen Festival. Now, this festival happens every year in Dresden, Germany, and it's made to commemorate the event of when Augustus II, also known as Augustus the Strong, when he hired the Bakers Guild of Dresden to make a 1.7 ton stollen for a party where he was expecting roughly 24,000 guests. And they were actually able to make this stollen. They had to build an oven big enough to make this massive bread. So the last little interesting tidbits about stollen is why it's served for Christmas. Now, allegedly, it was given its name Christstollen because with the powdered sugar on the top, I'll add a picture to the video later, of the whole bread. It's too big for me to actually hold it up without it falling on the floor. But when you have the whole bread in front of you, the powdered sugar on top allegedly is supposed to symbolize a swaddled baby Jesus. And the lumps that are created from the marzipan and the fruits is also supposed to symbolize the camels that brought gifts to baby Jesus. And the fruits itself inside the bread are supposed to symbolize the gifts that were brought to him that night as well.